Good morning, 7 East.
Well, we made it, people. We made it to Friday. It is the 30th episode of Free LEPRE Radio. I cannot wait for that even number of 040 to appear on the screen, but we'll have to wait till next week for that. Glad you could join us on this end of the week special episode. We've got a packed show for you today. We have 4 segments, if you can believe it. It is May 22nd. We're going to do our daily countdown, our regular first segment. We're actually going to change the order of things a bit. We're going to do animal news first because we have 2 other important things to discuss, and I want to end on a certain note, which is why I put it in this bright, electric, light blue color. So animal news, then 3 we have America on the Eve of Civil War setting up Unit 8. By number 4, we have a special thing coming on Tuesday. We're having a virtual field trip to Albany. You all will be receiving an email home about it, and I'll also give you some details at the end of this slideshow to hold you over until Tuesday. That is our agenda for today, our daily countdown. We are now on Friday. I made a little change to the calendar. So you have the topic of our video today. There's no new assignment. You have the slavery assignment still to finish if you haven't done it. But today is also, I was going to make it a Quizlet, mega Quizlet. I think I'm going to wait for Unit 8 for that because this is going to be the final GIM kit of 2019-2020. And it has to be at 11:30 to 12 because after that I have other meetings to do. So 11:30 to 12, it is the final mega GIM kit of 2019-2020. It will be on Unit 7. After this, we'll be doing Quizlet Live, and that will be it for Unit 8. I had never made a Quizlet Live game before, and I did not have enough questions for it from Unit 7, so we're going to be doing the last GIM kit. Now, take advantage of it. This may be the last time you play GIM kit in social studies. I have no idea what you're going to be playing next year. 25 is the number of the day because we have 25 days of school remaining, possibly less. I still don't know, and I feel like I won't know for a while. Animal news now. I got some weird and then some heartwarming animal stories for you today. First one is the weird one. So there was a robotic spy gorilla that was sent into some sort of preserve, and the robot spy gorilla was recording singing and farting among the gorilla population. So imagine that. Apparently, the gorillas were approaching this robot and had a hard time distinguishing it from a real one. It's kind of like the Terminator, but gorilla edition. Now for some heartwarming stories. So Hawk family gives worried Washingtonians a break from pandemic concerns. So apparently this family of hawks has set up a nest in this Washington community. As you can see, they're kind of like the baby Yoda of hawks. Very adorable birds. Although I'm sure the rabbits and squirrels in the neighborhood probably don't feel the same way. And won't when these little hawks grow to be big hawks. And finally, one of my favorite animals, and not just because it's our school mascot, but Toronto was obeying some social distance rules, and then there were some adorable baby foxes who started to appear on the scene and started making their home due to all the people kind of leaving the area. Well, apparently now these foxes are so adorable that people are coming out of social distancing just to watch them. And can you blame them, really? I mean, of course, I'm gonna take one of those home. That's our animal news for the week. And now for number 3 on our agenda, America on the Eve of Civil War. So we are done with westward expansion. Reform Movements was the last part of that unit. Now we're on our last unit of the year. We made it to the end. It is the last level. It is the boss fight of 7th grade social studies. So America on the Eve of Civil War. I have that intense red font to just show how intense it is. So next week marks the beginning of our last unit of the year. Unit 8 is about the American Civil War and the Reconstruction era that came right after. And I have a few Q&A things that might help the unit get set up for you. So the question is, well, what makes a civil war different from a regular war? So you may hear a lot of times in history that we call something a civil war, or we just call something a war. What's the difference? Well, a civil war is a war fought inside a country, between people of that country. Regular wars usually involve 2 or more different countries. And there have been many civil wars throughout history. There is one still going on in the world today, at least one. In Syria, if you heard the Syrian civil war, sometimes appears on the news, not recently because we've had a lot of news about other things, but there are many countries that have had civil wars. England has had a civil war. Spain has had a civil war in the 1900s. Russia had a civil war. Many countries have had civil wars. Usually when there's some kind of disagreement inside the country and the country kind of turns on itself. So that's what a civil war is, fought within the country by people of that same country. Question, I don't really know much about the American Civil War. Can you give a quick preview of what it's about? Yes. So the American Civil War begins in 1861. When states in the South decide to rebel and leave the country. The first shots of the Civil War were fired by Southerners on the U.S. military outpost Fort Sumter in South Carolina. So that's how the war starts. A bunch of states leave, They fire on a U.S. fort in South Carolina, and the war has started. Question: you may be wondering, if you don't know the backstory, why did the Southern states rebel and try to leave the country? Well, mainly over the issue of slavery. When Abraham Lincoln won the presidential election of 1860, which we'll discuss on Wednesday, as a Republican, a party which was made to end slavery, many Southerners feared he would try to outlaw slavery. So to prevent this from happening, they claimed they had the right to secede. Say that with me. Secede. It is not succeed. People always say succeed. It is not succeed. It is secede. Which means to leave the country and form their own. So when a state secedes, it means that they leave the country, kind of like this image shows. They are breaking off. Question: what did the Southern states do after they seceded from the United States? Well, they formed their own government and their own country, really, and they called themselves the Confederate States of America. And they used many different flags. The one in this image is not the most popular one. The most popular one was the one their army used, but this is their official flag, and I'll go into a whole thing about flags next week. And you see it's pretty much the entire South, not including Maryland, and part of Virginia does break off during the war. But these were these slave states. They wanted to make sure that slavery survived. They didn't want their Republican president Lincoln to outlaw it. So they said, you know what, we got to go out on our own. And that's what they tried to do. And so you have the Civil War. So why do we even bother learning about the Civil War? Well, because in many ways it was the biggest crisis in American history and the most important war America ever fought. You could argue that it's in some ways even more important than the Revolutionary War, because America might have gotten its independence without fighting the Revolutionary War sometime in the future like Canada did. But the American Civil War, if that war ended differently, the world might not even be the same today in terms of how we're living and what we experience in this country. This war decided whether America would remain united or not, and whether slavery would continue to exist in America or not. To this day, it is the deadliest conflict in American history. Nearly more Americans died in the Civil War alone than in all of America's other wars combined. So think about every single war America has ever fought besides the Civil War, and the amount of Americans that died in those wars is about the same as the Americans who died in this one war. So it's more than World War I and II combined. So you think about like World War I and World War II being these huge wars, probably some of the biggest wars in world history. But for America, the American Civil War was actually much worse. This is a war that defined America for the next century, and it still remains relevant to today. So there's a lot of wounds and scars from the Civil War that even you could argue today are not fully healed. And this is something that kind of charts America's path forward for the rest of the 1800s and into the 1900s. And America doesn't really, I guess you could say, feel united again and really feel like one country, maybe until World War I in the early 1900s. There's a lot of bitterness even after the end of the war. But that is your preview for the Civil War. We're going to get into that on Wednesday. But now, our special fourth segment of the day. I'm talking about the virtual field trip to Albany that is going to take place this Tuesday, May 26th. So in case you don't know, and you can applaud me and thank me even though I have nothing to do with it, this is a national holiday, you have Monday off next week due to Memorial Day. Memorial Day is when we honor those who have died in the service of this country. And we have the school day off. So there's no schoolwork, there's no Google Meets, there's nothing. It's a day off. If we were in school still, in person, you would be home. So this day should be kind of almost no different than if this coronavirus stuff wasn't happening. You'd still be home, it'd be a day off. So you have a 3-day weekend to start, and then when you come back on Tuesday, we're doing something really special. Tuesday, you have one thing to do for the entire day. Just one. Across every class. Just one thing to do. No multiple assignments, no assignments for many classes. You have one thing to do. We're going on a virtual field trip to Albany, New York. So if you remember, way back when we were in school, we collected permission slips from you to go to Albany. It was a really fun trip last year. I'll talk more about it next week when we actually do our virtual trip. But we were supposed to take this trip in person. But due to everything that has happened, we can't go in person. So instead, we're going on a virtual trip. An email home will be sent about this. You may have already gotten it by the time you're listening to this. So our virtual field trip, we're going to Albany, New York. There are 3 major stops that we're visiting virtually, just kind of how we would have in person. We're going to the New York State Capitol building. We're going to the New York State Museum. And then finally, there is this cruise that we go on the Hudson River, very close to the Erie Canal. So we would have been very close by to that as well, what we just learned about. It was an interesting trip last year. I remember being on the boat. The wind was crazy that day. There were all these chairs. There was a snack bar. And the chairs, I remember the wind was so strong that the chairs were just flying all over the ship. I remember people were like eating snacks, and as soon as they like let go of the wrapper, it just went flying into the river. Horrible for pollution purposes, but you just, can't expect everyone to hang on to everything. So here are some details. There is no other work being assigned on Tuesday for any other classes. This is the day to explore the field trip. We can't take in person and complete the one task which will count as an assignment in all of your core classes. Math, Science, Social Studies, and ELA. So on eSchool, you're going to see the same assignment posted 4 times. So it's basically kind of like 4 grades for 4 classes. It's something we did anyway. Kind of last year we had an assignment that the kids did on the field trip that we just counted for everything. It was part of capstone, but since we're not really doing capstone right now, this is like taking the place of it. We're not doing your individual capstone stuff, but we're still doing a capstone experience, and this trip is part of it. So this assignment kind of counts towards that. The virtual field trip will be posted on the Social Studies Google Classroom page with the assignment. I will also make a screencast setting up the field trip with instructions to show you what to do and where to go and how to get the assignment done. And just so you know, you're not alone in this. 7th graders in all 3 houses are doing this virtual field trip together on Tuesday, May 26th. This means that core classes will only give one other assignment for the week, because the week is only 3 days long after being off Monday and doing the trip on Tuesday. So you're not having 2 other social studies assignments in addition to this. You're having this, and then 1 social studies assignment. This, 1 science, 1 math, 1 ELA. So hopefully this gets you a moment to catch your breath. It's a shorter week. It's already starting off with a 4-day week. Then you have the field trip, and after that it's 3 days of regular instruction. And in those 3 days, you'll only have 1 assignment for the core classes. So hopefully this is a nice change of pace for us. We had a lot of fun last year. I wish we could have gone in person, but I still think that this is better than nothing. So I'm excited and looking forward to seeing how you all respond to it. This is the New York State Capitol building, so get ready to visit Albany on Tuesday. And until then, enjoy the long weekend. This is going to be Mr. LEPRE signing off.